I lost my agenda. Give me a second. This is the Mayor's Commission for Citizens with Disabilities meeting. We had a pre-meeting at 3 o'clock where we discussed our planning meeting for next month for 2023 and talk through some new members that you'll hopefully be seeing and hearing from in the next year. I need to inform you that our meeting is going to be broadcast at 7 p.m. on every Tuesday on Cox Channel 22. And you can also find the meeting at the Disabilities Commission website at www.cityofomaha.org. Then click on the mayor's office and click on Disabilities Commission. We are all here virtually because we are a small group and there was some illness going around. So we're going to have a virtual conversation with our guest in a moment. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to give you any announcements for the end of the year. Let me tell you a little bit about our role and our responsibilities as a commission, and then we will do some introductions. If I can find it. So as the commission, we advise the mayor and the city council, city department heads, and other City of Omaha personnel on issues of access, representation, employment, housing, and quality of life affecting citizens with disabilities and their respective families. We serve as a resource for Omaha citizens with disabilities and their families to express concerns and resolutions regarding issues affecting them. We publicize to citizens of Omaha the role of the Mayor's Commission for Citizens with Disabilities and the resources available to assist citizens with disabilities, employers, housing representatives, business owners, engineers and architects, and others who have a role in bettering the life of Omaha citizens. We work to promote awareness to the general public on the capabilities, needs, and desires of citizens with disabilities. We publicly recognize the efforts of employers, businesses, schools, organizations, and others who have demonstrated outstanding support of programs and services for disabled citizens. We serve as advocate for accessibility issues and implement plans and projects to improve services for citizens with disabilities. And we review and implement plans and projects for advocating services for citizens with disabilities. All that being said, I will start introductions. I am Megan Walls. My work with Assistology is around training and consultation of all areas of access and accessibility that impact the disability community specifically. So I work with people across the lifespan, and that is the lens that I bring. I'll go ahead and call on Stephanie to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Scabdahl. I work with Outlook Enrichment. We provide employment opportunities, employment services, independent living services, recreational opportunities, and benefits planning to those who are blind and visually impaired. And I'm here representing those folks. Nancy is next.
And I'm Nancy Floral. I'm with the Nebraska Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and we are the vocational rehabilitation agency that serves individuals that are visually impaired, blind, and deafblind. So likewise, independent living services, adjustment to blindness services, post-secondary opportunities, helping them retain employment and find employment.
Thank you. I forgot to mention I serve as the vice chair for this commission, and our chair is Mark Smith, whose specialty is in intellectual disability through his work at UNMC and MMI, and he was unable to join us today. We hope to have a growing commission in 2023. We did not necessarily have a quorum to approve anything formal from our previous meetings. We hope to do that in the next year. And so then, like I said, no meetings or preliminary things approved during our pre-meeting. So I am going to turn it over to our guest for today. Keith Station is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, the City of Omaha Mayor's Office, who's going to talk to us about the things that the city has been doing, is planning and working on around diversity, equity, inclusion, and that impact our citizens with disabilities. So, hello, Keith.
Good afternoon. Thank you. And just as I tried to share my screen, I just jumped off there. Thank you so much, Megan, and members of the commission for having me. Always a pleasure to be able to join this group. I'd like to walk through some of, as you mentioned, Megan, some of the work that's happening in the city related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some of the work that I get to work on directly, some of the work that the various committees that I represent on are doing, including this one, as well as some of the work that will come in 2023. I'd like to hopefully pull the curtain back and hopefully add value to viewers and listeners about how and why we are approaching the work of expanding a culture of inclusion in the city in the way that we are. So if you bear with me, I'll try to pull up my slides here and then walk through those. And I suppose at the end, if there's time for questions, or if you have questions while I'm sharing these, please chime in. So bear with me 1 second and please let me know, Megan, when you can see the first slide, the first colorful slide that I have.
It is up. It is not in presenters mode yet.
Okay, let's see. How about now? Is it now?
No, we can see it clearly, but if you wanted to get rid of the slides on the side, you probably go up to that top one. It says slideshow across the top. And then from beginning. It has not changed.
Well, let me try some other buttons. How about now? What do you see?
The same thing, but it is, I mean, it's big enough and clear enough. If you wanted to use the sidebar to just do it, it should be fine.
Okay. How about now?
There you go.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay, so quick about me from here. Before I was here at the City of Omaha, the Mayor's Office, I was at Heartland Workforce Solutions, the Workforce Investment Board, for about 5 years. I was appointed in the summer of 2020 and started in the fall on September 8th in this inaugural role. When I started, the first 6 things that we focused on accomplishing were these 6 things you see before you, which were to name a community advisory board, to name a city employee advisory board, to develop a strategic plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion in city government. Number 4, to expand diverse representation on city boards and commissions. 5, expand racial diversity in all departments, including police and especially police and fire. And 6, complete mandatory bias training for all city employees. When we started, we took a look at some of the striking data about how inclusive the City of Omaha is or isn't, depending on however you want to look at it. We talked about how companies, organizations of all kinds that are more ethnically diverse are 35% more likely to be profitable. While the city doesn't have a profit motive, it illustrates an important point. We talked about retention of the 18 to 34-year-old population as an important priority for the city, for businesses, for the chamber and our economic development, retention and attraction strategies. We talked about how the state is among the worst for outmigration for people 25 years and older with at least a bachelor's degree. We talked about where the city ranks, which is 220th. It was at that point, I suppose it's still close to that. 220th overall and 52nd among large cities in terms of ethnic diversity. So while the city is pretty diverse, and we are considered a large city now, I think we are the 39th largest city in terms of population in the country now. We are not as ethnically diverse relative to some of our peer and aspirational communities. The city of Omaha is the 38th most segregated city in the country. I think that number has fluctuated a bit, but it's still in the high 30s. And we are also 93rd out of 100 of the largest metros for earning gaps between Caucasians or whites and people of color. So those are some things that we looked at. You might be thinking, well, this seems to be a lot about race. And the work often leads with race as a key indicator, but doesn't stop there, especially with the way that we will be addressing and are addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the city. These tables that I have up here, and I'll talk through what they are from 2020 and 2021 regarding the fastest growing C-suite titles in business. And you'll see that in 2020, as well as last year in 2021, the number one position is Chief Diversity Officer. I just show that because even above Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Legal Officer, Chief Talent Officers, or CHROs, Chief Human Resources Officers, the number one role in the C-suite and the chief executive level that's being hired at businesses across industry sectors, the nonprofit, public, private, is Chief Diversity Officer. I just show this just to underscore the emphasis and the importance and the focus still on diversity and inclusion and having leadership in organizations in our communities. And so it went from, in 2020, it was 84%. And in 2021, last year, it was 111%. And that's the growth as a proportion of all C-suite hires or chief X hires in organizations. Quickly, some of the objectives for my role when I started, we quickly determined that it would be important to delineate between the internal and external objectives for my role. So the city of Omaha is a 3,000 person plus employer. We're obviously also a community. And so for my role, it made sense to make sure that when we're working on things for the city of Omaha's workforce versus when we're working for things for the city at large, that we are clear on that. Now, the primary focus of my role is more internal, working with and for our workforce. But obviously, if that's done well, then the effects will spill out into the community in terms of how we provide services and how we govern and how we do business, how we hire, things we fund, programs that we support, et cetera. Also, as I mentioned when I showed the brief press release for my role, develop a strategic plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then shortly, I'll show you the lead up to the consultant that we're working with for that plan. Again, expand representation on city boards and commissions, name and serve as liaison for the 2 new DEI boards. And later I'll show you the names of the people who are on those 2 committees that have been named, the inaugural groups of those. Also, again, expanding racial diversity in all departments to include police and fire. And then lastly, to implement bias training for all city employees. And I have in parentheses there, framed as an opportunity to learn about implicit bias versus, and it's valuable and a unique perk versus the way I describe it is it's not an arm twist. It's something that we get to do. We want employees to understand that this is something that we get to do. It's a good thing, makes us better. It is an investment to equip city employees with the tools and resources that they need to be able to do their jobs in a way that serves the community well. And how can we hold people accountable for expanding culture of inclusion if we haven't equipped them with those tools? And so that's what that training will be. There are some departments that are already underway with that training, and that's great. And we'll build on that, and we'll also make sure there's some consistency across departments on how we are offering implicit bias training. It was clear to me that a key partnership and alignment with the Human Resources Department as well as the Human Rights and Relations Department was an important thing to do. Also, it was also apparent that there are some ways we don't need to recreate the wheel. There are some great initiatives and programs and momentum that are already happening. For example, the Chamber's Code Initiative that are engaging the community and businesses and community members in conversations and education and learning and progress in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion. And then the last point there is something that's important to me that I've found to be effective when we are administering this work is how do we role model having respectful, responsible conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, culture, and bias. These are hard topics to discuss sometimes. They make people feel uncomfortable. And while our role is not to make people feel comfortable all the time, it is important to just be mindful that the conversations can be heavy and can be intricate and can be detailed and can be emotional. And so it is our charge to make sure that we are creating space for all voices to be heard and for that to turn into action that makes us better as a city. I talked about the code initiative. One of the first things we were able to do was support the Chamber's Code Initiative. The mayor was happy to sign the pledge and join and align with the CEOs for code, and also several of my colleagues in the mayor's office attend and support the Chamber's Code Employer Coalition group that, again, is one of several coalitions in town of diversity, equity, inclusion practitioners and professionals that convene to learn together, to share, to talk about strategies, and to support one another. Wanted to show a bit of data about the configuration of the City of Omaha's workforce. Now, these numbers are a month or so old, but they're pretty close still. I think we're down to we're at about 65 or so employees less than what this total says. But I wanted to show you the proportionality of this is still the same. And this is a self-reported ethnic identity count by race for City of Omaha employees. So this says that if you look at the grand total line on the bottom, it says that there are about 3,553 employees at the City of Omaha. And right now, again, there's 3,400 and some change. You'll see that, and it may not surprise you, the largest self-reported ethnic identity is white at 2,909 to be exact. The next largest is Black or African American at 250. Next is Hispanic or Latino at 242. The next highest is individuals that are identified as Asian at 54. I'm sorry, before Asian, individuals who identify as two or more races is 78. And then Asian is 54. And then American Indian or Alaska Native was 17. And then Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander non-Hispanic were 3. And the reason why those numbers are important is because the next way that we sort of analyze this data is we've compared it to the citywide population parity. And you'll see that of the 2,900 or so individuals that work for the City of Omaha that identify as white or Caucasian, that's 86% of our workforce. And that's 9%, and white Caucasian is the only self-reported ethnic identity that is a larger percentage compared to the citywide population parity. What that means is there's about 77% of the City of Omaha's population identifies white. So that's 86% of our workforce. And so that difference, that delta there is plus 9%. If you look at the others, Black and African American, Hispanic, Asian, and Native, all of those are below the comparative citywide population parity. So for example, the 250 City of Omaha African American employees are 7% of our workforce that's African American. That's 5% below the citywide population parity, meaning that City of Omaha is about 12% African American. So that's an important indicator for us, because in ideal situations in any community, again, it's a tall order. It's easier said than done, but it is an indicator for us to begin to incrementally address is how do you have your workforce represent the community that you serve, especially for a municipality. In the City of Omaha's 3,000 plus employees serve this diverse community population. And so it makes sense that from a standpoint of having the cultural competence and the awareness of cultural concerns, even beyond race, it's ideal to have that kind of reflection in your workforce. So that's something that we are looking at and trying to understand even better how we can parse down into what the workforce looks like and how we can address and expand a culture of inclusion, but also more diversity in our workforce. This is City of Omaha employee disability information. So this table shows that and I mentioned before, there's 3,490 employees now. That's a more recent figure. But we've began the process of trying to update this information and capture it more accurately. So of the 3,490 people, there are 2,683 or 76% of people that wish not to answer about the question of whether they have or have ever had a disability. Of our 3,490 person workforce, there are 777, or about 22% of individuals say, no, I do not have a disability. And then there are 30 individuals, or 0.86%, less than 1%, people that said, yes, I have a disability or previously had a disability. That's important information for us to know because in the same way we just discussed the racial population parity comparison, this is something that we are thinking about, need to understand better when we're thinking about how to take care of our workforce. I'll talk in a bit about the focus of our diversity, equity, inclusion work, really including making sure we take care of our current workforce and make sure we have a focus to retain workers here. We are in interesting and unique and critical times in workforce development in communities all over the country, but just focusing on Omaha, it makes a lot of sense to do what you can to innovate and create spaces to retain your workforce right now more than ever. So I talked about the two advisory boards. I want to take a second to let you know who's on those. The city employee advisory board members are a mixture of individuals representing their departments. So we have most of the departments here represented, and you'll see that, or maybe you know, or maybe you don't know, but just in case you don't, there are several departments that have subdivisions, if you will. So there are departments you may hear of, like a sewer maintenance department that is represented in the public works department. It's not its own department. So Christian Espinosa Torres who works in the city's Human Rights and Relations Department, is the chair of the City Employee Diversity Inclusion Board. Bridget Hadley, who works in the planning department, is the vice chair currently. Sarah Laura Tony, who is the secretary for City Council, is also the secretary for the board. And those are the three officers. Representing the law department is John Ashford, who's actually in the city prosecutor's office. Dan Cedar is with the Parks and Recreation Department. He's the assistant director. Jasmine Goodwin is with the Omaha Convention and Visitors Bureau, otherwise known as Visit Omaha. Anna Wilcoxon is with the Omaha Public Libraries. Galat Tong is with the Omaha Police Department. Also with the Omaha Police Department is Deputy Chief Cherie Thomas. Katie Swanson is another Parks and Recreation Department representative. Frank Rita is with the City Planning Department, he in addition to Bridget Hadley. Captain Y.V. Jones is the Omaha Fire Department representative. Donna Waller in the Finance Department. And Juan Villalobos in the Human Resources Department. The departments that are missing at this time, we don't have anyone from the city clerk's office, and that's something we are thinking about and working on, and how we represent fully the city, because that's what the purpose of having all of the departmental representation is. And there are some departments, again, that are so vast and have different types of operations that it makes sense to have more than one person as a part of those groups. Now let's look at the community member board. So Jin Ray Wong is a community member representative, and she's also on the Omaha Public Libraries board. So we have several individuals that represent on multiple boards, as well as the DEI community board. Echo Hawk Left Hand is a member of the Native American Advisory Board, as well as the Greater Community Board. Lupe Cole is a member of the Millennials Advisory Board. John Carl Denkovich is the chair of the LGBTQ plus advisory board. Currently, we do not have an individual that represents the Human Rights and Relations Board. That is pending. And then also for this commission, we don't have a representative named at the moment. And so those are a couple of priorities that we are looking at backfilling there. So we appreciate y'all's help on making sure we stay aligned there. Calvin Jones is a member of the community board. Gina Ponce is a member of the community board. Nikki Clark, Ugochukwu or Jude Okolo is a member of the community board. Shelley Mann, Elizabeth Ajongo, and Demetrius Watson. These individuals applied when the board was created just over a couple of years ago. And there was a review committee that looked at the applications and looked at the mission statements that individuals submitted. The initial configuration was to have an individual from each of the 7 city council districts represented. So it was intentional to make sure that they were diverse in as many ways as possible, from city geography to ethnic identity, to age, to occupation. And we feel that we did a really good job of confirming and appointing these individuals. And they've all been great and have offered some great input to what we can do to expand the culture of inclusion again within the city's workforce and then externally into the community. So led by the City Employee Board, we have developed a strict 3-year strategic plan that really is all of our work is enveloped in these 4 tenets that unfold to do other things. So again, as I mentioned, develop employee DEI training and education, employee development and enrichment, workforce recruitment has been a priority again, remains a priority. And then also city employee culture and branding is a part of that as well. We understand that the appearance or the brand that the city has as an employer is very important to us. We want to open that up. We want to extend that. We want to make sure from a workforce development standpoint that people understand that there are vast careers in the city of Omaha, and working for the city of Omaha. We desire to have innovative, creative, driven, dynamic professionals that work for the city. So we want to be a little bit more open and clear about those opportunities. On August 2nd of this year, we were able to accomplish a very important goal of ours, which was to secure our consultant to continue to build out our strategy to help us develop training and to really expand and confirm our structure for our diversity inclusion work. And so with the blessing of the mayor and support of the Omaha City Council, we activated a partnership with the National League of Cities. National League of Cities is a group that is a consortium of just what it sounds like, a national consortium of cities that share information about municipalities and policy and best practices and governance. And they have a department that is called Race, Equity, and Leadership, or the REAL team. And while, again, it leads with the race, it's not just about race in terms of what they'll be doing for us, but that REAL team, that Race, Equity, and Leadership team, will serve as a consultant for the city to help us to build out our strategic framework for diversity inclusion, and also help us to develop that training for all city employees. And the reason why, and you may be thinking, well, why do we need to retain this consultant? There's lots of trainers and there's lots of local consultants. But the unique thing about this group is that they do this for cities specifically with the unique needs that municipalities have. And we are members of the National League of Cities. So this was an opportunity to take advantage of this membership and the familiarity that the organization has. And so we've already embarked on the work. They have a structure that is called the train the trainer type of recommendation, where they will help us to develop and train a cadre of individuals that will initially be trainers for the 3,000 plus city employees. And we feel like that's the most sustainable way to equip all city employees with the training that the mayor committed that would be offered to all city employees. And that, again, that helps us to do it in a sustainable way. Our goal is to not have our training be a one and done instance, but really more so to develop a training that reserves the right to evolve and to meet the needs of our workforce. And so we're excited about that. So there was a resolution August 2nd, and it was signed off by the mayor and the finance director to embark on that work. And so we have so many hours of work that we'll work with the consultant, and we are in the process of holding stakeholder interviews with city council members and directors and also mid-level managers and ultimately just key stakeholders that work for the city will have a chance to be interviewed by the consultant to understand their respective departments and understand what are the critical next steps in making sure that we have a coherent, well-researched plan for training all of our city employees and really elevating a plan for diversity and inclusion. One of the things that is really low-hanging fruit, in my opinion, and in the opinion of my fellow committee members, is better alignment. Diversity and inclusion, sometimes diversity, equity, inclusion can seem like a homogenous sort of one-size-fit-all approach, and we all know that is not how it works. We have to be respectful of the various identities and experiences and lived experience of individuals that identify in various ways. And so it makes sense for us to have some alignment, again, not one agenda, but some alignment so that we can deduplicate some of the efforts that are happening and hopefully be more effective. So some of the boards and commissions and initiatives that have an opportunity to have better alignment, and we've already seen some of that, is with the Mayor's Native American Advisory Board that was initiated in 2017. I have the privilege of serving as the liaison from the mayor's office on that board. The mayor's LGBTQ plus advisory board. This body, the Mayor's Commission for Citizens with Disabilities, the Omaha Refugee Task Force, who Joe Kuhn, the acting Human Rights and Relations Director, and I represent the city on the Omaha Refugee Task Force, and also South Omaha Community Activity. Sometimes I think that we function. South Omaha is a unique community with a ton of culture and great heritage, but sometimes we function as if South Omaha is a different community, and it's part of Omaha. And so I think we have an opportunity to be more aligned and more in sync with priorities that are happening from education, healthcare, transportation, economic development, all those ways. And then certainly, last but not least, workforce development and Heartland Workforce Solutions as our workforce investment board. I have the privilege of just recently joining that board along with Nancy Thoreau here present. Nancy and I represent as board members for Heartland Workforce Solutions, and great opportunity there. In fact, in a recent board conversation, the organization has decided to really up its emphasis on the high demand industry sectors of healthcare and tech and IT. Is that right, Nancy?
Yes, that's exactly right.
And that is based on looking at a lot of data and trends and spending. We've invested a lot in transportation, distribution, logistics, and that's been great. We've trained a ton of people who can be drivers and matriculate through that field of TDL and warehousing, for that matter. But we have a real opportunity to meet the needs of our healthcare demands, and certainly the opportunity to equip people with the skills and experience and certifications for tech and IT, because it's a very cross-cutting sector that serves and feeds multiple industry sectors and subsectors and varying high wage occupations. So we're excited about that, and those are places where we can make sure that our efforts can be better aligned to support expanding a culture of inclusion, especially for individuals with varying abilities. One of the things that has elevated with some interest is employee resource groups. Employee resource groups are voluntary employee-led groups that foster a diverse, inclusive workplace aligned with organizational mission, values, goals, business practices, and objectives. Let me read that second part of that sentence again, because it's very important. ERGs, or employee resource groups, are employee-led groups that foster a diverse, inclusive workplace, and they are aligned with organizational mission, vision, values, goals, business practices, and objectives. Other benefits include the development of future leaders, increased employee engagement, and expanded marketplace reach. ERGs, or employee resource groups, are interdepartmental, meaning that in a lot of cases, in the best cases, you have employee resource groups that have someone from the public works department and the law department and the library. They are inclusive, meaning that they are for all who want to support a certain constituency or affinity group. And they are also supported by organizational policy and standards. And that's why I reread the second portion of that first sentence there. Employee resource groups are really an expanded portion of an organization's mission, and they are meant to foster a culture of belonging and support in an organization. And the data says that organizations that have employee resource groups have people that are employed at a higher clip, that are retained and stay longer, and then last and maybe just as important as the others is that that's the best recruitment tool, is an engaged, satisfied, fulfilled, well compensated, fairly compensated employee. That goes a lot farther sometimes than an online posting when you're looking for talent. So we recognize that. We have several ERGs, but they are primarily in public safety, meaning just in police and fire. And so we have an opportunity to develop more ERGs. In fact, some have organically developed after we surveyed city employees, and we're excited about where that's going. I'll just give you a quick glimpse of what the survey yielded that we sent out. We sent out a citywide survey and made hard copies as well for employees to weigh in, to ask them which ERGs would you be interested in supporting, and just gave a brief explanation of some that exist. The examples that we promote or showed were LGBTQ plus ERG, a Black employee resource group, empowering employees with disabilities resource group. That's how it's often framed for an ERG that focuses on varying abilities or individuals that live with disabilities. Refugee employee resource group, Latinx employee resource group, a veteran-focused employee resource group, a women's network employee resource group, a working parents employee resource group, and a young professionals employee resource group. We intentionally made the example listing diverse because, again, ERGs don't always have to have a racial identity attached to them to be effective or to be a place where individuals can connect and support one another. So we did a survey, and if you can't see that there, the highest level of interest was a women's network employee resource group. Some of the others that were higher were career development employee resource group. There was some interest for empowering employees with disabilities resource group. We got about a little over 300 responses back, which was a decent sample size, but we'd like to continue to see where there is interest. We also offered this survey with an open-ended question that said, what are some other employee resource groups you'd be interested in taking part in? And we got everything from gardening to religious ERG to lots of other things. So we have some important feedback that we got from city employees, again, across departments. I always like to share where individuals can find information about boards and commissions. Again, there are over 50 of them, and there's an opportunity for you to submit an application, and that's at the mayors-office.cityofomaha.org/boards and commissions. With a simple search of City of Omaha boards and commissions, you can see this list. When you click on one of the groups, it'll expand to show you who are the members of the board, and it gives you a brief description of what the board is meant to do. Some of the boards that exist are created by state mandate, some by city ordinance, and then some by executive order, meaning the mayor has the right to enact that. For example, the Mayor's Native American Advisory Board, Mayor Stothard initiated that board in 2017, and that board was initiated after Zachary Bear Hills was killed. This second page is just a listing of all those, just as an example. To be on some of the boards and commissions, you have to be a resident of the city, and I just have a page here that highlights how you can check if you are within the city limits. Sometimes people live in an SID that's in a area that maybe isn't in the city proper, so it's easy to check with your address if you are in the city and which district you're in. The next thing I wanted to share was the Mobile Omaha app. If you have not downloaded the Mobile Omaha app, you should do it. Here are the two versions for iOS users and for Android users. You can get information about the latest news, press releases, city resources, phone numbers, and information that will be useful for you. Even if you aren't connected to a wireless signal, you can still get some information about city resources and information. So the Mobile Omaha app is free and easy to download, and we should all do it. Also, I have begun to share this resource even more. There's so much information in the 2023 and even previous years adopted budget that lives on the finance page of the City of Omaha's website. So finance.cityofomaha.org, you can see the budget. It breaks down the percentage and proportionality of tax dollars paid, who works in what department, duties and responsibilities that are bestowed to various boards and commissions, information about ordinances. It's very, very useful and informative resource that I think not enough people take a look at to really understand where the city's investments are and what our priorities are. So please spread the news about the city's budget. The mayor presents the budget to the council in every summer, and budget time really comes around, seems like very frequently. It'll be time to start talking about the 2024 budget, I think probably in the next couple of months. So it's a pretty important and long process, but one that's helpful. So encourage as many people as you can to take a look at that city budget. And then lastly, here's my information for anyone that would like to contact me. Again, my name is Keith Station. I'm Deputy Chief of Staff for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I am at 1819 Farnham and Suite 300 in the mayor's office. And my phone number is 402-444-5054. And my email is keith.station@cityofomaha.org. Megan, that is the end of my presentation. I am happy to take questions or be a part of discussion if.
Yeah, I have a question, Keith. Thank you for showing up here and just being a wealth of knowledge about and being transparent about the future and diversity, equity, and inclusion within the city of Omaha. I think I don't think there's ever been a mayor that has had this position in their cabinet before, and I just want you're a trailblazer, and definitely thank you for all that. My question is, personally, what do you see are some goals for you and for the city when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Sure. Thank you for that question. And I just would join you, Gerald, in pointing out that I'm extremely grateful to the mayor as well for creating space to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mayor Stothard's been visionary in that, and I appreciate it very much. He's given us a really useful platform to make a difference here. I'm excited about the work that is happening with the library, for example. The consultant we have is really, really intentional about making sure that where our library is going is inclusive and is exceptional and accessible and high quality, and is a game changer for education and resources in this community. I'm very excited about that. I am encouraged by the fact that the city is now a part of the Vision Zero national, really international program that is focused on eliminating traffic fatalities. It would seem to be a lofty goal when you say Vision Zero is meant to make sure that there are zero fatalities with pedestrians and vehicles, or even vehicle to vehicle. But the city is vested, is locked in on it, and I'm excited to be a part of that, to see where that goes. Also, the city's investment in affordable housing I'm very excited about that. I've learned so much in the last year about what we can do to address the deficit that we have in our region for affordable housing. You all have heard is somewhere estimated between 80,000 to 100,000 units shy of affordable housing in our community. And affordable means different things, but affordable, quote, takes into account the area average median income, and also the number of people that can afford to spend 30% or less of their income going toward housing. And there's been some significant investments in by the city and by philanthropy and by Front Porch Investments, for example, to really address that head on, and to sort of pull in a cross-sectional leadership group to address it in three ways: in repurposing existing facilities, and new builds, and then also refurbishing substandard situations that, case in point, the unfortunate news that we are reacting to today are all opportunities that really make me excited, Gerald, about where we can go in this city as we address, the least of us and where the needs are great, and then also celebrate the success of expanding in economic development. One of the things that the mayor, as you know, Gerald, the mayor is always reminds us is that we can do both. We can expand and have important, great projects like the riverfront. We can also make sure we're addressing where there's great, urgent, critical need. I'm excited. I have a new coworker named Tamara Dwyer, who is right across the hallway. Tamara is the new homeless services coordinator, and so she is a thought leader and a nationally well respected person in working in homeless services that'll offer some leadership for the city to be on the front lines of addressing how we can systematize solutions for individuals who are experiencing homelessness, and how we tie that into housing, and how we tie that into other boards, commissions, initiatives that are addressing people that need help, and again in housing and transit and healthcare, and where the need is most urgent, acute, and greatest.
Thank you.
And Keith, this is Nancy. I have a question. So you touched on some of those statistics about employees that maybe disclose disability, and sometimes that's a real sensitive area, and not everyone's willing to do that. And when you look at that the city of Omaha is one of the larger employers of the area, it'd be always kind of interesting to know how many people are actually hired that are disabled versus maybe some existing employees that they have accommodated their disability and been able to retain. I guess my other comment is I really feel like it takes a village, all of us, to work together. And I think training that we can provide to departments, and that about educating them about how to retain their talent if they start experiencing a disability. I don't know what that looks like, but I do think we run into that all the time, that oftentimes some of those, the HR is very educated about disability rights and things, but when it gets down to those hiring managers or frontline supervisors, how they can learn more about being able to retain that talent and not to be worried about maybe some of the simple accommodations, because the average individual that is placed in employment that has a disability, it costs very little to accommodate them. And that's one of the misconceptions that we run into. So I guess it's just something that I toss out, that, for us to be able to work together on assisting with any training, increasing their knowledge, and realize that they have support.
Thank you for saying that, Nancy. I think that, as you know, in the work that we do, as we educate, sometimes you have to say what it is, but you also have to say what it isn't. It's an iterative process that requires you to say what it is and say what it is and say what it is. And I think that's important to debunk some of those myths, to create more advocates, to help people understand how to be a champion for just expanded awareness of it, to the degree that we can, to allow space for people to have grace to ask questions and to learn, and to be willing to be open to something that they don't know about, or that they may feel is a sensitive topic. Creating space for that is part of our job too. And so I appreciate that. And as it relates to better, more accurate data related to the city of Omaha's workforce and how, and even the city of Omaha as a community, that we have a real opportunity there. The good news is that the Human Resources Department understands that there's a better way to gather this data. And I'm giving this data also with the caveat that they are working with the law department to get a better understanding. Because I think, to be honest with you, Nancy, I think that 30 is very low when you think about the number of folks that work for the city of Omaha. But there's perhaps a stigma attached with someone self-identifying that they have or have had a disability. And so how can we normalize making sure we have accommodations for individuals that have or may have had a disability, and make sure that they know that the city of Omaha values all of its employees for all the reasons. I think that's lofty but attainable, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
One of my questions that hasn't already been asked was, when you're working on or thinking about engaging, police and fire emergency teams, is there anything that you can share about what aspects of, diversity and inclusion, hopefully some related to the disability community, that have been in discussion, or that, or if there are ways that we as a commission can support that effort, so that as emergency preparedness and other responses are, activated or needed, they're as prepared as can be.
Sure. Yeah, I think that the first thing that comes to mind, Megan, is the response from law enforcement and fire and rescue. It's well documented and has been shared that with law enforcement, for example, the mental health co-responders are a big part of assessing how we show up to when law enforcement is called. Now, while that is not the end all be all for what we can do, it is an important investment, I think. Investment in literally and figuratively, in what we can do to meet people where they are and to meet the needs of people that may have a mental health challenge, or somebody with a diagnosed mental illness. Making sure we have the mental health co-responders will help to de-escalate situations much better. And just, again, equipping law enforcement and fire and rescue with the tactics and the training to de-escalate situations, understand what people may need, and hopefully make situations better and not worse when they show up. Public safety has a hard go sometimes, and if we can make sure that, and police officers and firefighters are human beings too, and so if we can make sure that they are invested in and feel invested in and equipped with the resources to meet, in a lot of cases, their fellow citizens with the understanding and the cultural competence and the cultural awareness, again, in all the ways, then that's better. If we have a workforce that is diverse and reflects the communities that they're being served, especially in law enforcement and fire and rescue, that's all the better. I think it just lends to a safer place for the community, but also for our first responders. That's something that's important, is safety on both sides. I think sometimes we lose that. I think that we have to certainly think about these departments exist to keep citizens safe, but it is a priority and prerogative of the city to keep those employees safe. And I think that investing and expanding a culture of diversity and inclusion works both ways of that. You know, I think that sometimes it goes without, I think it goes without saying, but sometimes we need to say that this is, you know, this work also was meant to protect our law enforcement officers and firefighters from the situations that they're put into. And I think we ought to celebrate that and promote that and be, you know, feel like that's a win for our community, that investment is happening, you know, for both of those groups.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing all that. It's always nice to see how interdepartment collaboration can kind of come together for the greater impact, you know, in the community and those being served. We are down to like our final, I think, 4 minutes, if I'm correct. Does anyone have any final thoughts or questions for Keith?
This is Nancy. I was just going to say, I think this was a really wonderful presentation because Keith, when you first started, you came and joined us, and to sit here and look at where we are today, you know, I think, you know, it's really exciting to see what's been put in place. And I just think as we continue to collaborate, you know, I think it's just going to get even better. But this has raised some questions today as we start planning our meetings for the next this next year, of some ideas for us to be thinking about working on with the different boards or city departments.
Great. Thank you for saying that, Nancy, and likewise. And I'm happy to join as a participant in this group periodically. And then also, if you'll recall, Aaron Porterfield came before this body earlier this year to address disability inclusion and workforce. And so I'd love to, Nancy, maybe you as a fellow board member of Heartland Workforce Solutions, put our heads together with Aaron Porterfield just to see if we can check in periodically to keep that workforce conversation going and discussed here for citizens who are tuning into this meeting. I'd love to do that.
That'd be great. And Madam Chair, I was going to say I have no announcements. So
okay,
No announcement for me either.
Right. It's kind of quiet end of year stuff. So no old business, no new business, no announcements. So we're kind of wrapping up. We'll thank Jamie, our sign interpreter, and for Cox Communications for taping us. Channel 22 each Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 23rd, where we're going to do our annual planning and take some of these ideas, hopefully, and build them into some valuable content and speakers and activities for next year. And if no one has anything else, we will officially adjourn.
Just wish everyone a wonderful holidays.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Same to you.
Yeah, have a good holiday and keep warm these next couple days.
And travel safe if you're on the roads. Thank you, everybody.